history episode on OSRS ASMR. Following on from our last episode, which covered the Stone Age, I thought today's episode would fit quite nicely into. I thought we could move into the next significant age in human history today, the Bronze Age. You might recall from the previous video that there was also an age known as the Copper Age, but I couldn't really find all that much information about it, only other than it was essentially part of the Bronze Age itself. So, why don't we start from the Bronze Age and we'll digress into other areas as the episode progresses. So, first of all, I thought we'd take a look at history.com again. They had some really good content in the previous episode, and I think it's a good place to make a start once more. So before we go into a summary of the Bronze Age itself, let me direct your eyes to this illustration here, similar to the Stone Age illustration that we had in the other video, and I just find it interesting how some things have changed in our understanding of this age compared to the previous one, but some aspects of our understanding of humans at the time remain very similar. For instance, hairstyle was very similar, and beards and hair still overgrown, unkempt, grizzly. Although humans themselves seem to now be a lot less muscly. Perhaps the fact that we've relied on tools so long has meant that we've lost some of our innate animal strength. So our arms have become smaller. However, our tools are now slightly more advanced. As you can see here, this looks like some sort of buckets that's carried over some sort of molten metal from presumably this fire over here, and they're pouring the molten metal into a hole in the ground to help it cool. Otherwise, their clothes are still very similar, perhaps now being made of cotton as well, or other fabrics, but some still wearing what look like animal skins. So, let's move on and find out a bit more about the Bronze Age. The Bronze Age marked the first time humans started to work with metal. Bronze tools and weapons soon replaced earlier stone systems and the invention of the wheel. Interesting, I thought. The picture that we'd seen for the Stone Age in the previous episode was a nod towards the invention of the wheel, but in fact, our very early ancestors weren't quite at that part, or at that point in their evolutionary understanding of the world, or in their understanding of the world. So it wasn't until the Bronze Age that the wheel was discovered. In the Middle East and parts of Asia, the Bronze Age lasted from roughly 3,300 to 1200 BC, ending abruptly with the near simultaneous collapse of several prominent Bronze Age civilizations. Interesting. I suppose we'll read about that in the Bronze Age collapse a bit later on. Humans may have started smelting copper as early as 6000 BC in the Fertile Crescent, a region often called the Cradle of Civilization, and a historical area of the Middle East where agriculture and the world's first cities emerged. So as we know from the previous episodes, the Fertile Crescent is an area in the Middle East which encompasses Turkey, Cyprus, Syria, Israel, Lebanon, Iran, Iraq, Egypt, which was all very, very fertile. Okay. So the ancient Sumer may have been the first civilization to start adding tin to copper to make bronze. Bronze was harder and more durable than copper, which made bronze a better metal for tools and weapons. Archaeological evidence suggests the transition from copper to bronze. Archaeological evidence suggests the transition from copper to bronze took place around 3300 BC. The invention of bronze brought an end to the Stone Age, the prehistoric period dominated by the use of stone tools and weaponry. So we've got some dates now as to when these transitions happened. But let's have a quick look at the Sumer. So the Sumer was an ancient civilization founded in the Mesopotamian region of the Fertile Crescent, situated between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, known for their innovations in language, governance, architecture, and more. Sumerians are considered the creators of civilization as modern humans understand it. Their control of the region lasted for short of 2,000 years before the Babylonians took charge in 2004 BC. That's really interesting. So this is the Sumerian civilization, the civilization I've always known as the Mesopotamians. So that was their name, the Sumerians. And they eventually joined, unified with the Babylonians. Okay, so we've heard about the Sumerians. societies entered the Bronze Age at different times. Civilizations in Greece began working with bronze before 3000 BC, while the British Isles and China entered the Bronze Age much later, around 1900 BC and 1600 BC, respectively. Wow. So it's incredible that Greece was so early to. It's incredible that Greece had figured out how to use this metal so early, and a civilization such as China, or the Chinese, had not figured it out for another 1500 years almost, especially when you consider how innovative the Chinese were in the early days. A lot of inventions have come from China. But then I suppose a lot of inventions have come from the British Isles as well. But the British Isles of 1900 BC is very different to the British Isles of the Industrial Revolution, which, set the tone, or set the pace for the rest of the world to keep up with. So I suspect China must have been the same. The Bronze Age was marked by the rise of states or kingdoms. Large-scale societies joined under a central government by a powerful ruler. Bronze Age states interacted with each other through trade, warfare, migration, and the spread of ideas. Prominent Bronze Age kingdoms included Sumer and Babylonia in Mesopotamia, and Athens in ancient Greece. The Bronze Age ended around 1200 BC, when humans began to forge an even stronger metal, iron. And we'll have a look at that a little bit later in another episode, but the forging process we can have a look at on Wikipedia once we've finished on the history.com page. So here we have a lovely little illustration showing a map of Europe during the late Bronze Age, circa 1100 BC. And there are a few things that straight away stand out to me. Of course, we have the ancient Greeks down here, which were a powerful civilization of their own right, but also very philosophical and academic, and recorded so much of their prehistory. And then we have the other systems and races of Europe who look or seem like they have bigger areas of land, but were perhaps not quite as civilized as perhaps the Greeks were. But enjoyed their own Bronze Ages nonetheless. So here we have the urn field systems, which covers a small part of what is Catalonia in Spain, part of France, the majority of Germany, and the Netherlands, and even going as far as Poland, Hungary, Austria, the Czech Republic, and down into Italy. We have the Nordic Bronze Age, which takes up part of Norway and Sweden, Germany and Denmark. And then we have the Atlantic Bronze age system is that this system was, and you can tell looking at the geography of it, largely a Celtic system, as these were all ancient Celtic lands, particularly the British Isles, but also the areas of Brittany, northwest France, an area which was known as Gaul when the Romans invaded, and also the northwestern Iberian lands, Portugal and northern Spain, which were also Celtic in an ancient way, although I believe their traces of Celtic died out much quicker than other areas of the Atlantic Bronze Age system. Anyway, I digress, but it's still interesting to see the geographical divides, even just in the Bronze Age, and how different races and civilizations prospered at the time. So we have the Sumer. By the 4th millennium BC, Sumerians had established roughly a dozen city-states throughout ancient Mesopotamia, including Eridu and Uruk in what is now southern Iraq. Sumerians called themselves the Sagica, the black-headed ones. They were among the first to use bronze. They also pioneered the use of levees and canals for irrigation. Sumerians invented cuneiform script, one of the earliest forms of writing, and built large stepped pyramid temples called ziggurats. Sumerians celebrated art and literature. The 3,000-line poem Epic of Gilgamesh follows the adventures of a Sumerian king as he battles a forest monster and quests after the secrets of eternal life. And this would have been in a civilization that survived, that flourished 6,000 years ago. Such a long, long time ago. So then we also have Babylonia. Babylonia rose to prominence in the Bronze Age around 1900 BC in present-day Iraq. Its capital, the city of Babylon, was first occupied by people known as Amorites. The Amorite king, Hammurabi, created one of the world's earliest and most complete written legal codes. The Code of Hammurabi helped Babylon surpass the Sumerian city of Ur as the region's most powerful city. Now that's really interesting. I've heard of the Code of Hammurabi, but I wonder whether we can find out what some of those laws were. Okay, so it was carved into stone, as I suspect you'd expect at that time. So there were 282 edicts, all written in if-then form. For example, if a man steals an ox, then he must pay back 30 times its value. The edicts range from family law to professional contracts and administrative law, often outlining different standards of justice for the three classes of Babylonian society, the propertied class, freedmen and slaves. Interesting. Okay, well, let's move on to Assyria. Assyria was a major political and military power in ancient Mesopotamia. At its peak, the Assyrian Empire stretched from modern-day Iraq in the east to Turkey in the west and Egypt in the south. The Assyrians frequently warred against the pharaohs of ancient Egypt and the Hittite Empire of Turkey. Assyria is named after its original capital, the ancient city of Assur, situated on the west bank of the Tigris River in modern-day Iraq. Wow. Okay, so now we're moving into different areas of the world. So in China, Bronze Age civilizations centered around the Yellow River during the Shang Dynasty and the Zhou Dynasty. Chariots, weapons, and vessels were fashioned in bronze using piece mold casting, as opposed to the lost wax method used in other Bronze Age cultures. This meant a model had to be made of the desired object and then covered in a clay mold. The clay mold would then be cut into sections that were refired to create a single mold. Interesting idea. And then we have Bronze Age Greece, perhaps one of the better known Bronze Age civilizations. So Greece became a major hub of activity on the Mediterranean during the Bronze Age. The Bronze Age in Greece started with the Cycladic civilization, an early Bronze Age culture that arose southeast of the Greek mainland on the Cyclades islands in the Aegean Sea around 3200 BC. I beg your pardon if I've pronounced that wrong. Cyclades, I think, or Cyclades. Anyway, a few hundred years later, the Minoan civilization emerged on the island of Crete. The Minoans are considered the first advanced civilization in Europe. The Minoans were traders who exported timber, olive oil, wine, and dye to nearby Egypt, Syria, Cyprus, and the Greek mainland. They imported metals and other raw materials, including copper, tin, ivory, and precious stones. Around 1600 BC, the Mycenaean civilization arose on the Greek mainland, and their culture flourished during the late Bronze Age. Major Mycenaean power centers included Mycenæa, Thebes, Sparta, and Athens. Many Greek myths are tied to Mycenae. In Greek mythology, the city of Mycenae was founded by Perseus, the Greek hero who beheaded Medusa. The Mycenaean king Agamemnon invaded Troy during the Trojan War of Homer's Iliad, though there are no historical records of a Mycenaean king Messenia, and Troy, Troy being a city in what was now northwest Turkey. Unfortunately, there isn't any absolute proof that the Trojan War was real, and certainly there are aspects of the story which are complete fabrication, such as certain characters being fathered by Zeus. And here we go, so lengthy sieges were recorded in the era, but the strongest cities could hold out for a few months, not 10 full years. That's such a large amount of time. You can't imagine a city that far back in time having the resources to last for that long. But a very interesting and beloved story in Greek mythology. And so finally we move on to the Bronze Age collapse. So the Bronze Age ended abruptly around 1200 BC in the Middle East, North Africa and Mediterranean Europe. Historians don't know for sure what caused the Bronze Age collapse, but many believe the transition was sudden, violent and culturally disruptive. Major Bronze Age civilizations, including Mycenaean Greece, the Hittite Empire in Turkey, and ancient Egypt, fell within a short period of time. Ancient cities were abandoned, trade routes were lost, and literacy declined throughout the world. Throughout the region. Scholars believe a combination of natural catastrophes may have brought down several Bronze Age civilizations. Archaeological evidence suggests a succession of severe droughts in the eastern Mediterranean region over a 150-year period from 1250 to 1100 BC, likely figured prominently in the collapse. Earthquakes, famine, socio-political unrest, and invasion by nomadic tribes may also have played a role. Some interesting points there, particularly this last one, which we'll move on to in just a moment with Wikipedia, as particularly for ancient Greece, I believe this was one of the reasons that they began to fall as a civilization. Although they won the battles, they were invaded by a civilization or nomadic tribe of sea peoples, which hampered them as a culture. Now then, some interesting points that I initially looked at when I first looked at the Wikipedia page that I wanted to bring up again were this paragraph just here, which you may find interesting. I certainly did. So while terrestrial iron is naturally abundant, and certainly a lot more abundant than copper, its high melting point of 1538 degrees centigrade placed it out of reach of common use until the end of the second millennium BC. Tin's low melting point of 231.9 degrees Celsius, and copper's relatively moderate melting point of 1085 degrees Celsius place them within the capabilities of the Neolithic pottery kilns, which date back Celsius. In terms of Fahrenheit, there are Fahrenheit figures there also. Copper and tin ores are rare, as reflected in the fact that there were no tin bronzes in Western Asia before trading in bronze began in the 3rd millennium BC. Worldwide, the Bronze Age generally followed the Neolithic period, with the Chalcolithic serving as a transition. And this is the Chalcolithic is that copper age that we mentioned in our previous video, the age between the Stone Age and Bronze Age. Now then, there were some interesting illustrations on this page which I thought we could take a look at. So first of all we have some of the 3 most ancient civilizations known to man. The Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, and civilizations that existed in the Near East in general. And it shows a period where these civilizations truly became civilizations, and that is reflected by the fact that they entered their Bronze Ages, as prior to the Bronze Age, Stone Age civilizations were not. So Stone Age peoples were more nomadic and tribe-like. Here we have a bronze mirror from the 18th dynasty of Egypt. That's 1540 to 1296 BC. That really is quite incredible. You can see how the shine might allow some sort of reflection to be shown to the wielder. Of course, not as sophisticated as mirrors that we have today. But still a remarkable piece. So we have a lot of different civilizations that existed around the time. And here we have a Chalcolithic copper mine in Timna Valley, Israel. I'm not sure who the person is, but it's incredible to think that this was a mine from the Chalcolithic period. Remember, this is the period before the Bronze Age, so this was still 3,000, 4,000 years ago that mine was created. It's incredible seeing all of these different artifacts, the Korean Bronze Age, the Japanese Bronze Age, how so many civilizations went through these ages and created their own cultures, their own ornaments, decorations which have survived to this day. Chinese artifacts, Iranian artifacts, Egyptian. Really is quite incredible. Here we have some of the European Bronze Ages, the Aegean Bronze, sure what a lot of these are. The Beaker culture. The Beaker culture. Let's have a look and see what the Beaker culture is, as it seems to have been shared across Europe. The Bell Beaker culture. How interesting. So it's a culture around everyone at the time drinking from the same sort of beaker. And because this beaker was found in so many different places dating to the same dates around Europe, it was given its own era in terms of European Bronze Age history. Arising from 2800 BC, it lasted in Britain until as late as 1800 BC, but in continental Europe only until 2300 BC. Wow. Inverted bell beaker. The drinking vessel. Very interesting. Right. Here we have the gold mask of Agamemnon, produced during the Mycenaean civilization from Mycenae, Greece, 1550 BC. This is the face of the so-called king who invaded the city of Troy. And now we have the Aegean collapse, and this was the illustration I was really keen on us having another look at, because I love a map, and I think particularly when you're talking about history, maps really do give you a good idea of they tell a story in themselves, and they tell it quickly and easily. So first of all, let's have a look at the legends that we have here. So we have the Mycenaean Greece culture. Here, the Hittite Empire, which is in much of what is now Turkey. The New Kingdom of Egypt, which is again mostly Egypt with some parts of the Gaza Strip, Israel and Lebanon. The purple section looks like Syria, and this is an area which is in conflict, which was in conflict between the Hittites and Egypt. Now bear in mind, this is from around 1200 BC. 1200 BC. Up here we have some arrows to show the destroyed cities and the invasions and migrations of different peoples. So, first of all, we have the Teresh movement to Etruria and Shekelesh to Sardinia. These were peoples that came from the west and moved east. Now, these weren't the same people that founded Rome. Rome wasn't founded for another, I believe it was another 700 or 800 years. But it's a movement, and certainly a move which may have disrupted Bronze Age society. And then we have the Sea Peoples, and these were the Sea Peoples that I mentioned previously. In terms of the people who the Sea Peoples, including Lucca, Sheridan, and Weshesh, attacked unsuccessfully Egypt. That was from the west here. That was unsuccessful. Then we have the Sea Peoples, who destroyed settlements in Syria and Cyprus. Perhaps they were part of the Hittite civilization, or perhaps they also destroyed their cities. And then we have the Sea Peoples, including Peliset, Shekelesh, Denyen, and they attacked unsuccessfully Egypt. So these attacks were all successfully repelled, but as you can see by the destroyed city indicator, many Egyptian cities were destroyed. Byblos, Ashkelon, Ashdod. There are a lot of ancient cities here which didn't make it. And of course those that did. In Greece we have the Mycenaean Greece subjugated to widespread destruction from the north. So Europeans, Eastern Europeans coming in and into the Greek Aegean lands, destroying much of what they came across. And likewise the Troy and Hittite cities destroyed, possibly by populations coming from Europe, the Phrygians. Now, interestingly enough, one of the destroyed cities there is Troy. So this leads us to believe that perhaps archaeologists believe that Troy was actually destroyed by a movement, a migration of peoples or an army, but not necessarily the army of Mycenae from the story, but in fact a cultural movement from Europe. And it's interesting to see this is 1200 years ago in the Bronze Age. This is the same sort of time that much of the pyramids of Egypt, some of the great pyramids have been built and stood for many hundreds of years. Many of Greece's early mythologies and stories originate from this sort of era or slightly before. So this is still not quite as far back as some of the very ancient things, but some of the very ancient things that we know about these civilizations, but these are still much before some of the more contemporary stories that we know, such as the Battle of Thermopylae between the Spartans and the Persians, which happened, I think it's another 600 to 800 years later. Alexander the Great, which again was for another 600 or 800 years. So an interesting look at an ancient world, but one that rapidly changes. And I think when we tackle the Iron Age in our next video, perhaps we'll have a look and see how things have changed on another map. So here, just to look at a few more illustrations and pictures, we have an old Irish axe head, which is, to be honest, as you'd expect an axe head to look. Now this looks very nice. intricate, so well crafted. I wonder if this was the sort of someone important. A golden helmet from Spain. So this would have been worn as a helmet by a soldier. I can't imagine it would have felt particularly comfortable. Perhaps you'd wear some sort of fabric underneath it. A sun chariot from Denmark. Oh wow. I don't think the horse is meant to be on the chariot. But I suppose this is almost like a child's toy maybe, or, well, I suspect a very rich child, but what does it play some sort of purpose? The sun chariots. Is there anything here about the sun chariot? No. Okay. And how about, just lastly, we end on a bit of trade. Trade and industry played a major role in the development of the ancient Bronze Age civilizations, with artifacts of the Indus Valley civilization being found in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt. It is clear that these civilizations were not only in touch with each other, but also trading with each other. Early long-distance trade was limited almost exclusively to luxury goods like spices, textiles, and precious metals. Not only did this make cities with ample amounts of these products extremely rich, but also led to an intermingling of cultures for the first time in history. Trade routes were not only over land, but also over water. The first and most extensive trade routes were over rivers such as the Nile, the Tigris, and Euphrates, which led to growth of cities on the banks of these rivers. The domestication of camels at a later time also helped encourage the use of trade routes overland, linking the Indus Valley with the Mediterranean. This further led to towns sprouting up in numbers anywhere and everywhere there was a pit stop or caravan to ship at port. Very interesting. It's interesting that luxury goods like spices and textiles were those that were usually traded. I heard an interesting fact about black pepper, which is something that we consider, very cheap and easily found spice. You go into a restaurant and it's on every table. Most people have them in their homes. It's fairly inexpensive. However, black pepper originated from an area near Pakistan or India, I believe. So back even as late as the Middle Ages, but certainly back in these sorts of days, it was an extremely rare spice, and only the kings and queens had the sort of money to own black pepper and use it as a spice, and apparently it was worth more. It was worth more than gold per pound. So, an incredible fact. So at this time, the cities that had these spices would have been incredibly rich. They would have been trading these spices for vast amounts of cash or whatever their currency was, but most likely, particularly in the Bronze Age, other goods extremely expensive the next. Nothing more than a table of condiments seen in most buildings around the world. Makes you think what other commodities will change over time. I think gold is one that is likely changing as the value of gold is depleting. Well, so this has been a very informative episode. I hope it's been nice and relaxing for you. And let's just have a little look at bronze. Wow, so here's some examples of bronze. So, here we have some Roman bronze nails, not during the Bronze Age, but bronze nonetheless, with inscriptions. It's incredible to think that bronze and copper and tin were such widely used metals at one point in history. Whereas now, I think the only thing I can really think of copper being used for is primarily for wiring. Copper wire is quite a popular use of it, but otherwise we use iron for most things, and titanium and aluminium. And tin. Tin we use primarily for, well, tins, I think. But that's interesting. Typically modern bronze is 88% copper and 12% tin. Wow, they really did need to find a lot of copper. Okay, well, I think we'll leave it there for tonight. I was going to end a moment ago, but I do this a lot and get distracted. But I think this is a good area to leave it, and we'll be able to transition into iron on the next episode. The Iron Age is what we'll be looking at, so please tune in for that one, and we'll continue our journey